Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Don't Open That Door. As always, I'm your host Justin, and I'm joined today by Nico. Nico, how you doing, bro?
Doing pretty good.
All right, and I'm also joined by the ever-present Dan. Dan, how you doing?
Doing great. I'm zombified by how good this movie was.
Oh yeah? Bet you would be. Today we're going to be covering Train to Busan. It is a Korean movie, so I apologize in advance for any butchery of any names that we do here on the podcast. Rest assured, my girlfriend will punish me later. Written and directed by Yeong Sang-ho, it stars Yeong, Yumi Jung, Ma Dong-Seok, who is actually really popular. He's also in The Gangster, the Cop, and the Devil, Kim Yoo-Sung, and Kim Soo-an. Hopefully I said those right. So this movie opens with Seok-woo. He is basically kind of a dad who's more taken up with work than he is his family. Him and his wife are separated, and he's got a cute little daughter, Soo-an. So for her birthday, she wants to go to Busan to see her mom. They get onto a train, and they unfortunately, when they go there, they also see an infected woman. Or they don't see one, sorry. An infected woman just gets onto the train. At kind of taking a step back, at the start of the movie, we see a deer that kind of gets run over and then comes back to life. And that kind of sets the scene as people start coming back to life. And when they get infected, they turn almost like maybe instantly, right, guys? Within maybe 30 seconds to a minute, they turn.
Yeah, it's pretty rapid.
So the infected woman on the train starts biting people and infecting them, and it kind of spreads all over the place. And it's kind of at this point in time we meet our cast of characters. There's a lot of people in this movie, but not too many of them matter. So we have Seok-woo and Soo-an, as I described before. There's Sang-hwa, he's real buff. He's the guy played by Ma Dong-seok, and he is accompanied by his wife, Seung-kyung. She is pregnant. And then we also have Jin-hee. She is a cheerleader / manager for a baseball team that happens to be on the train. And we have Yeong-guk, who is also a member of the baseball team. Lastly, we have In-gil. He's a homeless man that finds his way onto the train. And Yeong-suk. He's kind of an asshole. And throughout the whole movie, all he ever is an asshole. Very well said, Nico. I could have said it myself.
And you did.
So the train keeps going, and, as they're on the train, they see news reports of quote unquote riots, and the government basically puts out these news notices saying, hey, this is just, people being unruly. Don't worry about it. But eventually, the internet takes hold and they see, no, wait, these are legit zombies. The train stops at Daejeon Station. Everyone gets off because the military's there, but it looks like the military lost their fight with the zombies because at that point in time, they just get rushed by a wall of zombies, and what is honestly a really impressive scene. Everyone kind of rushes back onto the train, and the train just takes off, and they basically have to make it back. They have but they have to make it to Busan. Busan is essentially a safe city, or so they hope. Now, when they get onto the train, it's interesting because the bulk of the people make it onto the 15th car. However, essentially the women that we care about, the pregnant wife, the daughter, Soo-an, and also the homeless guy, In-gil, they get stuck in a bathroom on the 13th car. Meanwhile, our heroes, Sang-hwa, Seok-woo, and Yeong-guk, the baseball player, they all wind up on the 9th car, and they undertake what has to be one of the most badass scenes I've ever seen. And they fight their way all the way from the 9th car to the 13th car, save their loved ones and In-gil, and then they make it to the 15th car, where the people in the 15th car are like, we don't want to let you in. You could be infected. And they're just heartless. And, because of their heartlessness, unfortunately, the best boy, Sang-hwa, he ends up getting bitten, and he ends up getting killed. Now, the train that they're on eventually has to stop because it turns out the tracks are kind of jammed up with, broken down trains and such. So to get to Busan, they have to transfer. Unfortunately, not everyone makes the transfer. The homeless guy, he gives up his life to save the little girl and the pregnant woman. And finally, the little girl, the pregnant woman, and our main character, Seok-woo, make it onto one last train headed for Busan. Even, the conductor doesn't make it as he tries to save the resident asshole, Yeong-suk, who ends up just getting himself infected and killed. So on the train, Yeong-Suk is infected, and he basically can't admit it. He can't admit that he's infected until he turns into a zombie, and then he attacks, our crew. Now, Seung-kyung, she tries to help Suk-woo. Unfortunately, he's just not strong enough to fight out the zombies the same way that Sang-hwa was. So the only way that he can properly save her, because he promised Sang-hwa that he would protect his wife. So he covers up the zombie's mouth with his hand. He gets bit, and he basically throws a zombie off, and he starts to turn into a zombie. He says goodbye to his daughter, thinks back to when she was born, and then he jumps off the train so he can't hurt her. The movie closes with, we do see that Busan is actually safe. They actually have a military setup. At first, they're going to kill Suwon and Sung-kyung because they think they're zombies. However, Suwon sings a song that is kind of a callback to the start of the movie. Her father was so absent, he never got to hear her sing at any of her school recitals. And she's singing that song because she misses him. And they realize it's a human, and they're rescued. So somewhat of a happy ending. Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot more that I couldn't cover in that summary, but it is just, I'm going to say right now, this is a fucking amazing movie.
Yes.
Do you guys think it's a good movie?
Absolutely.
Stellar movie. Really, really great.
Agreed. So let's break this down. This is going to be a joy compared to some of the other films we've watched. Visuals. I mean, what can we say? This movie dropped in, I believe, let me double check that. I believe it was 2016. Hope I was right. Yes,
you were right.
Limited release in 2016. And yeah, what do you guys think about the visuals, the costumes, the design, camera work? How was it?
I thought it was all amazing. I mean, there's a couple parts here and there where you could tell it was like, CGI or whatever, when there's 100 zombies and they're kind of like crawling on top of each other, like those kind of scenes. It looks a little CGI'd, a little special effecty, which is completely understandable. Other than that, I thought the costumes, the makeup, everything was amazing.
Nika?
The thing that stuck with me the most is Korean trains are real nice. Just, man, they look nice. Everything looks so pristine, and the countryside was beautiful. Just the color palette for this movie, for being so dark and, hard and depressing. It was a stunningly beautiful movie.
Yeah, I have no choice but to agree with both of you. And for the record, I normally hate CGI. I abhor it. And let me tell you, some of those scenes where they have essentially waves of zombies chasing after people, I mean, those
was
are
cool
amazing.
as hell.
It is. It is cool as shit. Music. What do we think about the music direction for this?
I thought it was good. I mean, nothing to me caught my attention, which in this case, I mean that a good way. It successfully amplified the movie, didn't detract from it at all.
See, I'm interested to hear you say that, Dan, because I thought the music was absolutely fantastic. I just loved the usage of piano and the orchestra and the brass section. It sounded like John Williams almost directed the music for this. And it was just so well done, how we had the brief moments of quiet punctuated by, these tiptoeing piano lines. And then when shit's really hitting the fan, we have the French horns and the brass just blaring in your ears. And it really fit the drama of everything really, really well. That was honestly probably one of my favorite parts, was the music in it, and that is a surprising thing for me to say about a horror movie.
All right, so let me go ahead and break this down right now. What do you think about, this is obviously a Korean movie. Do you think there are any kind of differences between this and maybe some of the more well-known American zombie movies? So for example, Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, that kind of thing. Do we see any differences here between the two? I guess, Dan, I'll lead with you. Or any other zombie movies you might have seen that are American.
One, I think that the zombies are much more animated and much more
reanimated.
They're quicker, and yes, they shuffle and they are semi-mindless. But when I think of like zombies, I think of just shuffling around and slow and whatever. But no, right. These guys can run. And I also thought that I feel like in a lot of Korean movies, or the few anyways that I've seen, there's also a lot more deeper meaning too. And I thought that there was a lot more character development in a movie like this kind of Korean zombie movie versus an equivalent American movie. I was much more attached to the characters than I was in most movies, to be honest with you.
True, true, true. Although I will say, as far as the deeper meaning thing goes, George Romero, I will say nothing bad about that man. His movies, I think sometimes they had a lot of roots. For example, I know that sometimes, for example, he had something to say about like commercialism, things to say about race, that kind of thing. So I do think that sometimes, there were some zombie movies here in America that were perhaps more intelligent than they were given their due for. But I agree. I think this movie definitely had a lot of depth that is lacking in perhaps some of the more modern or kind of soulless zombie movies. Nico, anything from you?
I mean, I'll be honest and show my hand here. I'm not the biggest connoisseur of zombie movies, so take that how you will. But I thought that the sort of emphasis on community and the really wide cast here was one of the movie's biggest strengths. And I'm of the mind that if you can get away with having a small cast, you should. But every single person in this movie felt developed, felt unique, and felt essential to the story that was going on here. I truly did not get the feeling that there was any fluff here whatsoever. And if that is representative of Korean directing, filmmaking, insofar as, perhaps they have a more of a sense for appreciating larger casts and communities, then they definitely achieved that. But I just thought it was a fantastic movie, even respective of its claim to past zombie movies.
That's interesting. In terms of your comment on Korean kind of movies, I will say this for this and maybe some other Korean movies that have made it to our shores and kind of been big names. That's because they're the blockbuster movies. I've seen some other kind of smaller Korean movies with my girlfriend, and I think they're kind of pretty similar to a lot of American movies. So not trying to detract from this at all, and this movie is definitely incredible, but I wouldn't necessarily take this as a representation of all Korean movies or media.
That's fair, and I appreciate that.
I would definitely kind of say this is not a standout by any means, but it's interesting. Although Korean cinema in general is kind of making real strides in the last like 10, 15, 20 years even. They've made huge strides. And speaking of, let me ask you guys this. In terms of kind of issues that this movie tackled or, kind of cultural things they've had to say, I appreciate that, all three of us coming from a Western/American background, we're not gonna be able to grasp everything this movie has to say. But I still think there's a couple things we can talk about. Particularly, I'm going to start with how the government tried to cover up, that there was like an actual problem or an actual issue at the start. And they were trying to say, oh, don't believe rumors, don't believe like false things. I honestly feel like that's something that would happen here. I feel like the government would definitely try to cover it up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Smash the state.
Any other issues that you guys can think about? Dan, anything you can think about?
I think there was an emphasis on, I don't know how to say it, but society, I guess, classism, maybe, because the main character, the guy is, I think he's a fund manager, I think they say.
He is a fund manager, correct?
He makes quite a bit of money, but he works a lot of hours, and a big part of the movie is he is not very present in his daughter's life. So like Justin already mentioned, he doesn't get the chance to see her perform at her recitals, and near the beginning of the movie, actually the whole day that the movie takes place is her birthday. So at the beginning of the movie, he gets her a present. He gets her a Nintendo Wii, but when she opens it, she doesn't really care about it because he already got her a Nintendo Wii for the last gift giving event. Yeah. So he's, he works a lot, and I think that says something about sort of that society, and they bring it up multiple times about how one of the other main characters, I don't remember his name, but the kind of badass character.
Sang-hwa, buff my guy.
Yes. He at one point mentions, the main character is what does he call him?
A leech.
Yeah, leech. Or he leeches off of other like people lower than him. He's a fund manager. He makes money off of people lower than him or whatever. And the resident asshole in the film is a COO of some other train company, I think it was.
It's either trains or buses.
Something like that, yeah. And so he's also in a high position. So it's like a lot of the, I don't even want to say antagonists, because obviously the zombies are the main antagonists, but a lot of those kind of negative feelings towards the main characters, result from, or at least what they have in common anyways, is the high profile jobs and things like that, versus the typically good, quote unquote, good people in the movie are the older ladies who sacrifice themselves, or of course the buff guy.
One of them was better than the other, I think.
Oh, that's true. Fair point. But typically the good people in the movie are people who we assume anyways are of lower class or lower income anyways, or lower position.
It's an interesting point. There was one other thing that I personally saw, and I think, so if you look at a lot of this movie, I feel like all the bad things that happen in this movie are the byproduct and result of men. I think that...
Do you mean gender, or is like humanity?
Gender.
Okay, interesting.
All of the good things that happen in the movie are in some way the byproduct of women. Now, that's kind of a generalization, but the zombie virus being created is a direct result of, we only ever see men being involved with that, whether it's the hedge fund people who are all men, or the guys actually working on the project. We only see like one or two of them. They're also men. And also all like the really kind of selfish assholes are led by men. Now, at the start of the movie, the very first zombie that Sang-hwa encounters, and he's the buff kind of heroic character, but he doesn't help her right away. He only helps when his wife says, "Hey, aren't you going to help her?" And then he helps her. Similarly, the main character, Seok-woo, he only helps people at the start of the movie, at least, when, his daughter demands it of him. She's like, "Why wouldn't you help?" Or, "I know those people." And then he feels bad and then he helps. But normally he's just an asshole. And a lot of people in this movie are assholes. Some of them end up not being, but that's kind of how it starts. And I guess before I go any further, Nico, any thoughts on that?
Well, yes. Do you think that was intentional? Do you think that this film is serving as an intentional commentary on men's sort of like status in society as more cold and less caring and nurturing? Do you think that was intentional?
Absolutely. Because I have a second point once you finish that I also want to talk about, but keep going.
Well, I mean, that was pretty much it. Like again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not too privy to a lot of tropes in zombie movies, so I was more of taking this as a character piece than anything. I think that it definitely, like Dan was saying, has some bits about classism for sure, particularly in regard to Ingil, the homeless man, being one of the unlikely few who makes it to the second to last scene in the movie, makes it like 90% of the way to Busan, and you just wouldn't expect that. You wouldn't expect that they would highlight someone who is, I don't know, just it seemed unlikely, and I appreciated that. And also that we got the Heart of Gold Suwon, the daughter of Seok-woo, who was acting kind of like as the conscience or the angel on the shoulder to her father, as well as everyone else in the movie, like you were saying, and offering a distinct commentary, or maybe not commentary, but just, a better side to things. And there was even one scene about, I think it was halfway through the movie or a little bit after, where Seok-woo, our main character, even talks to his daughter Suwon and says, "You didn't have to do that." She says, "What?" And Suwon says, Seok-woo says, "Be so good." And then Suwon says some of the cutest and saddest shit I have heard. And I believe the exact wording was, "You only care about yourself. That's why mommy left." Which
That was a little bit of a bolt. Big oof there.
oof.
And that's funny because I have another quote that I wanted to say that kind of sums up what I would say is there's a scene where, Sung-hwa and the father, they kind of bond a little bit, and he says, dads get all the shit, but it's all sacrifice. And the concept of, kind of positive masculine traits comes out because some of the characters do see some growth and development where, like sacrificing yourself for the greater good, being a protector, being a guardian. I mean, we even get, some of the characters like Ingil, a homeless guy who at the start, he only cared about himself. But after seeing the sacrifice and seeing all this stuff, he gives his life to save the little girl and, Seong Kyung. So I think it's really, really cool. And on terms of characters growing and developing, Dan, you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, one thing that I thought was really interesting was, of course, the main character goes through, his development, like we kind of already mentioned a little bit, where at the beginning, he's really just looking out for himself and his daughter. And then, a few people call him out on that. And then over time, by the end of the movie, he's I don't want to say sacrificing because he doesn't die that way, but he definitely puts his life in danger to save other people. And he's definitely much, steps up and becomes more of a team player. But I thought it was kind of interesting as he gets more heroic, I guess, and less of an asshole. The COO, the resident asshole, I don't want to say he becomes more of an asshole because I think he was always an ass, but there's more opportunities for him to be an asshole.
Like a greater contrast almost.
Right, exactly. So I thought it was really interesting as the main character goes through his character development and loses his assholishness, a different character is sort of showing off. As the movie goes on, he becomes more of an asshole almost. And that kind of trade-off there was kind of interesting to me.
Speaking of some more growth, Nico, how'd you feel about the little side tangent of Yeong and Jin-hee, the baseball player and kind of like the cheerleader? Did you enjoy their relationship throughout the movie?
Honestly, yeah, I did. I thought it was a pretty, just a lighthearted little romance that was blossoming throughout the chaos that was ensuing around them. We see Yeong-guk, the baseball player, is on the train and Jin-hee sits down next to him, and the rest of the baseball team sort of like eggs him on, being like, you guys were meant to be, you guys are meant to be accepted, it's fate. And then we see later on that they do, I don't know if you could say end up together per se.
They end together.
They end up together. They don't there's no reconciliation of like, I love you too. It's actually really tragic. I thought one of the sadder scenes in the movie where
paint the scene for us.
Yeah, so Yeong-guk is, I believe they're in the vestibule at this time, or
I think so, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, they're in the vestibule at this time, and Jin-hee has just gotten bitten, and just been bit rather. God, and we just see Yeong-guk break down, and he's like, "I didn't want this to happen. Oh God, I'm so sorry, Jin-hee." And he doesn't even make an attempt to run, and I thought that was perhaps one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the movie, when he just resigns himself to his fate and allows himself to be there with Jin-hee and turn with her. That was just a really poignant scene. I really enjoyed it.
So one thing that I thought was also interesting, there's very heavy emphasis on family and kind of what it means to be part of family. I think aside from just the actual family members, Suwon and Seok-woo, I think family plays another important part in this one, because Suwon sort of gets quote unquote adopted by Song Kyung, one out of necessity because everyone else is dead at the end. but also even early on in the movie, Suwon hangs on to her and cries in her shoulder, and Song Kyung sort of comforts her and everything like that. So even near the beginning of the movie, when everything starts happening, that family tie is already kind of starting.
I will say I agree with you 100%. And that brings up one scene that I'm going to forget if I don't say it right now. There's a scene where literally Seok-woo has just been so selfish because he would have kind of closed the door on Sung-hwa and Sung-hyung. Like he was going to close the door on them, but his daughter said, "Hey, I know those people," and he actually he actually opens it back up for them. And there's a scene where he tells his daughter to wait when I believe they get to Daejeon Station, and he was trying to sneak away and kind of just get his daughter away safely. Then the zombies break in and he can't save her. He's running to go save her and he can't get to her. And the zombies literally like inches away from biting her face. I guess it'd be centimeters away because it's, in Korea, but away from biting her face. And then, Sung-hwa just comes in with a boom. He just like punches the shit out of the zombie. And then like him and his wife save Suwon and they take her away. And it's just like, that scene filled my heart with so much goodness. I was like, I need to do that too. But no, that's
hopefully
that's
you won't
really
have
true.
to.
Yeah, right.
Sure enough. Although speaking of that, if you were in this,
Oh, no.
Nico, if and I'll give it the three of us. Let's say me, you, and Dan happen to be on a fateful train to Busan. How should we do it? How would you kind of plot your survival in this universe?
Oh God. Oh man. I'd die. I'd straight up die. Like I would be the one who would like inadvertently sacrifice himself due to some clumsy fuckery and allow you two to live on, because I am not built for that kind of shit, homie. I guess I would be the In-Gil of this universe. I'd be the homeless man. And I say that with the utmost optimism.
All right, Dan, anything you would do maybe to give yourself a little edge on survival here?
Me, I would just try to collect weapons. I would try to like as we're running through like the zombies area that the baseball team had. As we were running through that car, I would have tried to grab like
all
a baseball
bats.
bat or something. I would just
Dual
like,
wielding
arm
bats.
up. Yeah, I would just arm myself.
And that, is actually pretty different because what I noticed in this movie that wasn't in this movie that's present in every single American movie? Guns.
Except at the very end of this movie.
We would be strapped.
Yeah.
Like
real shit.
If this movie was called like Caravan to Houston and it was in Texas, what do you see over there, Jim? Looks like some zombies there, Ned. We'll pull out your 22 and give him a bang.
Imagine if there was a matchup between this and Tremors. I would watch that in a heartbeat. Just get out the old elephant gun there, Reba. Sure thing there, Paul.
Blow.
She just blasts through a car of them.
Yeah, no. Although to be fair, this was on public transportation. Most people in America, if we have any international fans, all three of you, we're not all strapped. So I don't think it'd be that many. But no.
My best defense is my good looks.
My best defense is your good looks. So nah, because you look tasty, so they'd eat you. So hey. But no, I guess for me, there's not really much you could do on a train, right? Like,
yeah,
I think pretty much the only thing I could do, and this was something that the movie kind of did up front, if they had stuck together more, if they'd worked together better, more people would have lived. They'd have had a better chance of survival. Because sometimes, you gotta, one person, if they sacrifice themselves, they can save a lot more people rather than everyone just be a dick and try to fuck over other people so they live. And I think perhaps the biggest scene where that happens, and we're about to go into our favorite scenes now, and I'm going to go ahead and just say my least favorite scene, and it's a great scene, but it just hurts me and gets me angry. There's a scene, and I kind of said it earlier in the summary, where our heroes basically, they've fought their way through like 5 or 6 cars full of zombies. They've made it to where everyone else is. And they're banging on the door, please open, please open, please open. And all the people, and ironically, it's the first class car, they're all unwilling to open the door. They're all unwilling to let people in because they don't want to even risk a little bit to help anyone else. And they're just cowards. And you see some of the people in the car crying because they don't want to do this, but they feel like they have to because they're kind of going with the group. And it's like, man, it really makes you think about what would you do? Would you just be there and would you just go with the group and just lock people out? Like, I don't know. I could never do that personally. I'd like to think that I could never do that.
Bystander effect says you would.
Yeah, that's one of those things where I totally sit here and say, man, I would never do that. But in that situation, I hope I wouldn't do that. I would like to think I wouldn't, but I don't know. That would be tough.
I think I would do it. I'm just gonna say it. I think I would.
It's okay. I think you would too. But
like, if it was you two, I would open the door. But like, if it's some random motherfucker that I don't know, like some guy named Tim that I just happen to have a passing conversation with, sorry, buddy.
I guess if the zombies were close, I would tell you don't open that door. But and they had a lot of time too, because they had Sang-hwa who was like holding the door with his massive muscles.
Was the tank of all tanks there.
Yo, he was jacked as shit. So,
can we talk about how he lifted a motherfucker up to the roof and threw him across the car? This guy was over here Mortal Kombating his way across these cars, and then he just like picks up a zombie, slams him into the ceiling of the car, and just like tosses him like a featherweight. It was beautiful.
I will say this as well. The actor who plays him, he has trained people in mixed martial arts.
That makes sense.
He's like a legit badass in real life. He'd fucking take you apart. So
that's fair.
Slightly off topic, but I have to give props to the conductor of the train, the train driver, whatever, because that dude was probably one of the bravest people there. He had no problem like sacrificing himself. Well, one, when they get stopped at the one place, the one city, and they have to get out, like he's the one, like immediately he's like, everyone, I'm gonna get out, I'm gonna find a different train.
That's true.
Get on the far left train. And like he went out, he was scared shitless, but like he had no doubts. He just did it. And then he got on a new train. They started leaving, and then when he saw the asshole, and I was thinking that this, I was like, why did he save the asshole? But he actually never knew the guy was an asshole, because
that's true.
The conductor never got to really interact with the people. So like he sacrificed himself for this asshole, again, not knowing he was an asshole, but still, like throughout the whole movie, that train driver was actually like low key, like really brave and just a really stand up individual.
True. Well, good point. Good point. Do you think that has to do with kind of like the old school mentality? Because he's an older gentleman of like the captain goes down with the ship and the captain protects his passengers at all costs.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think about that until just now, until you said that. But yeah, I think so.
Definitely agreed.
So now, and I know we'll try and keep it, but I have to talk about this, and then I won't say anything for a while, but my favorite scene in the movie, and I'm totally going to steal this. So our heroes, as it was, Seok-woo, Sang-hwa, and Yeong-guk, they realized that their people are, as I said before, they were like 3 or 4 cars away in the 13th car. Without saying anything, they all immediately start like taking off their shirts or their jackets, and they start taping themselves up without any words being spoken. They knew they were going to go rescue them. There was no conversation. All he said was, "You're going through." And then they all stopped and they all started taping themselves up. So if a zombie were to bite them, the tape would stop the bite from penetrating the skin. And it was just so incredibly badass. Like that right there was like, if I could like condense manliness into gum and then chew it, it would look like that.
Why are we condensing it into gum?
I don't know. I felt like it was appropriate.
Okay.
And it was cool because there was a fight as they're making their way through the trains of the car. I would have to say it probably did have a little bit of inspiration from Snowpiercer or vice versa. I can't remember which came out first.
Snowpiercer was first.
Snowpiercer was first. Okay. So yeah, it looked like this movie was a little bit inspired off of Snowpiercer in that regard. As that was kind of happening, they realized that in the darkness, the zombies can't see and they attack based on sight. And there was a cool scene where they fight them in the dark, in the light. And then when it goes dark, it all goes silent.
Mm-hmm.
And they use stealth and like tactics to get through, which was badass as shit. And for that alone, like if the rest of this movie was bad, which it's not, it's excellent. But for that scene alone, watch the movie. Either if you guys have any kind of favorite scenes that stick out.
So my favorite sequence was what you just described. However, I got a hot take. One of my favorite
Ooh.
scenes was actually, I don't know if we really talked about them too much, but there's two older women in the movie
Right.
and who are sisters. And at one point they get separated. When they're out, when they think that one city is safe, they go out, and when they get back, they get separated. So one is on like the 15th car and one is on the 13th car or whatever. So they don't realize that they're both alive. So one of the sisters ends up, I don't remember if she sacrifices herself or exactly what, but she
let others go first.
She resigned herself to her fate.
Yeah, so she becomes a zombie. And then during that whole scene where when the main heroic characters finally make it back and they get locked out by everyone on the train, everyone else on the train, the remaining sister is looking through the door and sees her sister but zombified, and she walks over to the door and presses her hand up against the door to her sister, and then opens the door and lets all the zombies in and basically kills everyone on this train. And I thought that was, I don't want to say cool, but very interesting, because that was to me sort of like almost commentary on that hive mentality, kind of like screwing everyone else over so that you survive. Like when she makes that decision, she looks back at everyone who stopped these people from being saved, I guess. And she looks back and she's like, fuck this, like fuck them. And she just goes and, reunites with her sister, meaning kills her and everyone on that train there. But I actually thought that was kind of interesting.
And because if they had let them in the first time of asking, her sister would have lived.
It's true.
Right, exactly.
Crazy. Nico, any scenes from you?
I mean, I just want to say that fuck that lady.
Really?
Yeah, fuck that lady. She was saying like how, oh, my sister's gone. What a bunch of shit. Like, I would have cut your losses there. Like, at least you're alive. But apart from that, I got to give it up to the quiet moments in this film. Like the very, very beginning, when it still seems to be all right, and we see the scene with Suk-woo at his house with his mother and his daughter Suwon, and we just have a nice quiet little moment for the two of them to talk about. Like when you were saying, when he was dropping off the Nintendo Wii and she says, "Oh, you already got me one of these." I just thought that was a really sweet scene. Like the preamble to that was showing the marital problems they were having, and we're not exactly privy to what caused the divorce or any of the specifics, but we can tell from everything going on that they are, if not divorced, then at least on the way out. And just seeing the struggle that Suk-woo had in maintaining and fostering the bond with his daughter Suwon was really poetic, I thought.
I don't think they're divorced. I think they're separated.
Okay. And I bring that up partially because my favorite scene was also going from cars 9 to 15, but also because I wanted to highlight the humanity that brings to the movie.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is one of my other favorite scenes, was actually the very end, the very, very, very final scene. And this was one of the very few movies out there that actually brought tears to my eyes. Yep. And the fact that it's a horror movie that did that is amazing, I thought.
You talking about with the song in the tunnel?
Yeah, just when they actually finally get saved and they survive and accept, the main character is dead and all that kind of stuff. Just that in the culmination of everything that happened, that journey, and the journey is over now. Just, yeah, I thought that was very powerful.
Yeah, so to kind of paint that a little more, after, it's just Suwon and Seung-kyung, and they finally, after the sacrifice of Suk-woo, they make it off the train. They're walking to Busan, and there's a group of military soldiers about to shoot them, like I said before. And due to the song, they don't do it. And they go out, and then, they're safe. They're like, prepare for survivors. And it's yeah, I agree. I will say the first time I saw it, it did choke me up a little bit, particularly because she was the girl was really sad. I was I felt bad. But yeah, so I guess, and I was going to say this, who was everyone's favorite character in this movie? Can we all just say it?
Sang-hwa.
You're goddamn right. So, was there... Sang-hwa is just a badass. I'm sorry. Is there anything in this movie that maybe you guys didn't like? Or any scenes or character? Oh, everyone has a character they don't like. 1, 2, 3. Yeong-Suk.
Yeong-Suk.
Asshole.
That should be the translation. His name in English. But no. Were there anything that happened in the movie, or maybe any scenes that you really didn't like or weren't fond of? And I get this is a great movie, so we totally nitpicky, but go ahead.
I actually have something that I want to raise that isn't a scene from this, but in pulling up just doing a Google search, getting the cast names and everything up so that we can make sure we got all our ducks in a row, I was scrolling down and I found out that there's going to be a Train to Busan 2. And why?
Interesting.
I don't know. I do.
This is an actual thing. Like, it's not like a rumor. It's an actual thing that's happening. We're also going to get a remake of Train to Busan, and I similarly don't know how I feel about that.
Are we going to get like an American remake?
Yeah, directed by James Wan, one of my favorite horror directors.
Interesting. Yeah. I was just going to say I'm not excited for an American remake, but with him on it, that could be good.
Yeah. No, I'm optimistic at best, but still kind of wary. Do you guys think that this should have a sequel?
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I also don't think so.
I think even if it does, because I'm seeing a lot of mixed information. I see that, that Wan might be a producer on it, on the Korean sequel. So I don't know if that entails him also doing an American one. I don't know. I'll have to see more when we get some more solid info there. But even if there was a sequel, I wouldn't want to see the same characters.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I feel like their story's done. I do know though there is a prequel, right? Seoul Station.
Yep.
I have not seen it, and we won't discuss it here because spoilers. But like I still need to see that because it could be awesome.
Yeah, I'd be down to see that too.
Maybe that's a future vibe.
If there is going to be an American remake of Train to Busan,
Amtrak.
Since we're talking.
They're all fucked. There's no plot. They're just fucked.
Train would stop and everyone would just be like, all right, normal day.
I guess we're here.
But how do you think that would change? Because, earlier we were talking about the difference between Korean and American movies. And I think you had even mentioned like, we might not fully, being Westerners, we might not fully understand everything going on in the movie because we're not part of Korean culture necessarily. But do you think any of the underlying themes would change at all to cater to the more American market?
I could see race playing a bigger factor.
That's the one thing I was going to say. Korea is much more homogenous than America is. So I could totally see, for example, I don't know, Sung-hwa, I could totally see him being like an African American character or another minority. He could be like brown, black, so one of these things, because I do think he is. So, and kind of a little bit of context on him, he kind of looks like a gangster.
You think so?
I think he looks like an ex-gangster.
I could see that. Yeah,
and I think that, so he is known, the actor is known for that role. And that's part of the reason why they brought him on. Like, he's known as like the mafioso role in like a lot of movies. He's been typecast as that mafioso. So I do think that, and that has negative connotations, obviously, in their society. But I think, race would definitely be another kind of, not trying to align a comparison between the two, but the same way some people think less of, like ex-criminals, some people think less of minorities. So I think that could be an interesting kind of parallel to draw. But I do think that largely, and I have a terrible, terrible hatred of American remakes of foreign films, whether it's something from Japan, Korea, France, England. I think in general, remakes are trash because they're only trying to be a mirror, but a reflection is always paler than the image. So
the more you know.
Just got to clean your mirror.
And objects in the mirror are closer than they may seem.
No, they're smaller. Yep, you're right. So
they are smaller too. Yes.
So
now for the physics of light.
Let me ask you guys this. So I guess aside from potential sequel remake talk, any scenes in the movie itself stick out as negatives, or was this just really good?
I thought it was just really good.
It was just really damn good, man.
God fucking damn it. This was really good. So I guess one thing before we kind of head into, my last train of thought here, Do we think that
Train of
Metro has
thought.
been delayed a little bit? But
Ooh.
do you think that Suwon, her mother, is alive in Busan?
Yeah.
I think so.
I agree. God damn it, we're in agreement too much. But no, I agree. I think they had said, right, they succeeded in their primary defense.
Hmm.
So I really
Yeah.
hope her mom is alive. But I'm sure if she wasn't, then Sung Kyung would adopt her like instantly.
Just by default.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, I guess you're with me now. Okay.
So let's go into what the critics thought, and I will tell you, this movie was a rip-roaring success. The Rotten Tomato score from critics at 93%. The audience has it at 88%. Thoughts?
I'd say that's pretty accurate to how I feel.
I think the audience should be higher because they're ungrateful little ingrates.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised because I know for a fact that a lot of Rotten Tomatoes, as far as I know, is mainly based on Western audience reviews.
Which makes sense.
But I think some people don't like reading subtitles. And I think that
Yeah.
Which is
probably lowered
dumb.
the score by a couple points.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Now, I will say I am also in full agreement that the critic of 93% is probably where I'd put this, to be honest.
Mhm.
I can find no flaws there. Nico, agreed?
I'm hesitant to say 93% because I love this so much. I just don't know what a 100 or higher than 93 looks like. So by default, yeah, I guess I would have to say 93 is right where I'd put it.
Now, I will say this as well. So Train to Busan, you know, it is literally the highest grossing Korean film in Malaysia, Hong Kong, and Singapore. More than 11 million people saw this in Korea.
Wow.
I mean, it got $93.1 million worldwide, which when you're not thinking about like, you know,
The Avengers.
Avengers or
Shit.
anything like that making billions, but think of it this way. Do you know what the budget on this movie was?
What?
8.5 million
Wow.
US.
Oh, wow.
So they made over 10 times their budget.
That's wild.
So yeah, this was just incredible by every stretch of the imagination. I mean, and just if I could, you know, kind of wrap up my last thoughts at least, this movie is fucking amazing. If you are a fan at all of horror, zombies, good movies, reading, I don't care what, like this
Reading.
this is an amazing movie, and you are cheating yourself of an experience if you don't watch it. Any thoughts, guys? Any final thoughts?
My last and final thought is just a reminder that the train driver is a badass. Unsung
Yeah.
hero.
My thought is that I feel privileged and lucky to have a car.
Not take public transportation.
Yeah.
For a second, I was like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, I'm just glad that I have things, you know, irrespective of this. I also like having a nail file.
Hey, there you go. But just so we can kind of get a consensus, does this movie get the "Don't Open That Door" stamp of approval, Nico?
Absolutely, yes, in a heartbeat.
Dan?
I think so, but I think I might even need something a little bit stronger.
Stronger. You trying to
Ooh.
give us the gold-plated "Don't Open That Door" stamp of approval?
Gold plated.
I think
All
we
right.
can instate that, yeah.
So this is the first time ever we're going to give this movie the gold-plated "Don't Open That Door" stamp of approval. It's been stamped, signed, and sealed.
Stamp.
So that's been it from us here at Don't Open That Door. We urge you, if you haven't seen this movie already, to go see the movie. If you have, then definitely let us know your thoughts. Remember, ladies and gents, don't open that door. Have a great night, everyone.